Whatever the opposite of beginner's luck is, that's what I have. I've had entire trays of seedlings rot. I've had huge infestations of fungus gnats and just weird problems that I never saw in any of the guides or anything like that. I know I'm not alone in that, so comment below with your toughest seed starting mistakes and I'll jump into the 10 things I wish I had known sooner. Number 1 is to prevent fungus gnats from the beginning by mixing mosquito bits into your potting mix. They're just really prevalent and something that's kind of difficult to get rid of. So mosquito bits kill the eggs before it becomes an issue. If they do start to hatch, however, you want to get on top of it because the adults are super prolific. They'll start laying eggs and it can get out of control really fast. So you want to use these yellow sticky traps combined with mosquito bits in the water or sprinkled on top of the soil. Both of these methods work fairly fast, so within about 10 days, you should be good to go. So next is to plant like with like. When I first started gardening, I would do a few peppers, a few radishes, a few whatever, and those all have different germination times and different temperature needs. So now I group plants as much as possible together so that they're getting the right nutrition, watering, all of that stuff, instead of kind of having a mix of things and sacrificing some of them because they're just not in the right environment. Number 3, this might be obvious to some people, but label each module and each cell if you've got different plants within each one. Don't just say these are tomatoes. Say what kind of tomatoes they are, because if you really like what you grow, you want to be able to grow them again. And I've had a couple situations where I just planted something out, didn't really pay attention to the actual variety, and was kind of bummed because I was like, oh, I just don't know what that is if I want to plant it again. Number 4 is if you are using LED lighting like I have right here, do be careful that the lights are not too strong. I've had some really strange situations with tomato leaves especially. It's called edema, where the lights and the leaves just are too close essentially, and it's different than sunburn. It's almost more like the cells are exploding within the leaf. You know, they're going outside and gonna be in the hot sun, so it can be a little bit counterintuitive to kind of modulate their light exposure, but just be aware that if your plants are getting too tall, close to LEDs, it can cause some issues like edema. We get so caught up in seedlings being leggy that sometimes we can forget that there is an opposite problem of sunburn, leaf curl, other issues that come from overexposure to light. Number 5 is to only use a heat mat during germination for plants that really like a little bit of extra warmth during that phase. You really don't want to use it beyond that because it can actually stress the seedlings out and cause them to grow leggy, especially if you have this heat mat on all the time and there's no break like there is in nature where you have like maybe a warmer day and a cooler night. Beyond that top layer of soil, the roots do like to stay cool for most plants, and so you don't want to stress them out by like having this heat mat on constantly. Number 6 is moisture. I see people overwatering seedlings far more often than I see them underwatering. It's pretty easy to see when you're underwatering and pretty easy to fix, honestly. It's a lot harder to fix overwatering. So when you start your seedlings, you want to just get the potting soil or potting mix to field capacity, which means that if you squeeze a handful of it, not a bunch of water drops out. It's just moist enough. And then it's my advice to actually not water for like a week after that. And for a lot of plants, just wait until they actually sprout, wait until they germinate. For seedlings that sit on the surface and need light and moisture to germinate, 1, I use a layer of vermiculite to help keep the moisture levels constant, and then I come through and mist a couple times a day and use a humidity dome just until those plants emerge. Number 7 is airflow. I notice this most of all on plants like cabbage and broccoli, where they'll create this long stem and then almost always they seem to flop over. But if there is a fan going in the room where they are, then the seedling develops a really strong stalk and I don't have those issues quite so much. It also can get really windy where I live, so anything I can do to help those plants prepare for their eventual life in the harsh outdoors is going to be better for them. Number 8 is stratification and scarification. So stratification is for any seed that needs a period of cold before it germinates. You can store these seeds in the freezer, or you can make little seed ice cubes out of them. I've just started doing that this year. What's happening here is that the moisture inside the seed is expanding. It's helping to break down that seed coat, so when you go to plant it, it has a much better chance of germinating. And scarification is where you just are roughing up the edge of the seed, the outer shell. So you can either snip the root end, or you can take some sandpaper to extra hard seeds. Number 9 is seed orientation. So for a lot of seeds, they are gonna figure themselves out. You can just set them on the soil or bury them just slightly. But for really big seeds like squash, I have planted them totally flat like this before and they have rotted. And so now I pay a lot more attention to, one, the root end of a seed, and make sure that that is positioned to where it can go down fairly easily. And then for something like pumpkin and squash, instead of planting it flat like this, I am planting it like this. I hope that makes sense. On the edge, so that when that root goes down, it can rise up and not have any issues. And last, this one's tough, but don't start things too soon. Err towards the shorter window. If it says 4 to 6 weeks, err towards that shorter window, see how it goes, and then increase from there if they aren't big enough. You really want to plan them out in the early stages of their growth cycle. You don't want it to be close to flowering or fruiting, because that is going to stress the plant out. And when you go to plant it out, it's going to be like, I'm already way past this, I'm ready to go, and you won't really get the yields that you're looking for. I always learn a ton on the comments from videos like this, so please share below what kinds of things you would add to a list like this. And if you're ready to start your own seeds, check out this video on how I set up this seed rack behind me for less than $150, and it only takes like 15 minutes to set up.